gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked, no lightning they. Do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late, they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Welcome to ERTH.
Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. I first heard that poem in the movie Interstellar. And even though I was in advanced placement English in high school, I knew once I got to college I really wasn't that well read. But that might have to do with my upbringing. Humble beginnings. And I'm grateful for that. I realized recently that the ones born with it quote-unquote easy or with the silver spoon, they have to make drama. They have to formulate challenge. And believe me, I am so guilty and not proud. I'm not ashamed. But I've caused some difficulty for myself just out of the fact that I felt like I deserved it. It might make a good story. Lots of reasons. Growing up, all I really knew was my mother and aunts and my uncle. And there are extended family, great aunts, great uncles. My mom, she worked retail. A store used to be called Riches. I don't know if they went under or if they got bought out. And we lived in various places. When I was around 3 years old, she transitioned us to Atlanta, Georgia. And, you know, a townhouse there, here, apartment there. Recently, we actually went back and saw the first apartment we lived in. It looks so much smaller. Everything looks so much smaller when you get older. You go back to look at what was so big when you were a kid. She made sure to raise me in the church. And she was invited to a small Methodist church, not too far away from where we were living at the moment, but a bit across town. And this church was surrounded in the nearby streets. There's a street right in front of it, like a T intersection. And then less than, let's say, 0.3 of a mile at each end of this road were other intersections. And these houses were occupied by 4 women whose parents had built this small Methodist church, St. James Methodist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, the original one. And we would, throughout my childhood, coming of age, no matter where we live, she made sure that we went to church on Sundays. She had been invited by one of these sisters whose parents had built the church, and her name was Susie. Susie became a grandmother to me. She took care of me like her own, and she had 2 older sons, and she'd babysit me and her husband Leon. And it was very Georgia. Not a small house, 3-4 bedroom, but all one story. And, you know, Friday nights, I remember her sons getting in arguments with their parents about going out and what they wanted to do and just seeing life. And I was one of them. They took me in as their own. And Sundays after church, her cooking, that soul food, there was nothing like it. I mean, I'm so grateful because I got that experience of having that meal after church on Sundays that my grandmother cooked. Black-eyed peas, greens, cornbread, ham, chicken. Just nurturing my soul, my innocent little soul. Her sister Sally, who lived almost directly across the street from that church, on that road at the T intersection. One side of that street was her house. The other side was a graveyard. And in that graveyard, the rest of their family is buried. Sally, we used to always watch The Bodyguard, like every time she babysat me. Every day. On repeat. And I loved it. It never got old. She loved it. I loved it. Whitney Houston, Kevin Costner. And one thing I didn't realize till I got older is that Sally always had a dog. Same type of dog named Sassy. Big floppy ears, blonde hair. I should look up what they're called. But if one died, she'd get another and name that dog Sassy. So Sassy lived on from body to body. The opposite end of the street from where Susie lived and past Sally's house, on that corner, was Chestine, the oldest of the sisters. The toughest, the sternest, the hardest. I remember sitting in Susie's house, and it just seemed like a normal day, but they got a phone call and Leon starts shuffling around the house, and next thing I know, he's headed out the front door with a shotgun. I hear him speed in his pickup truck down the street to Chestine's house. And then bang! That was the first gunshot I ever heard. A snake had crawled up through her toilet, and she knew Leon had a shotgun. And no questions asked, he went over there and he shot that snake. Later that day, they took me down there and they showed me that dead snake. It was in the middle of her backyard. It was black and it had red and yellow stripes on it. Now, I'm not a genius on species of snakes, but all I know is stripes ain't good. And snakes coming through your toilet ain't good. Next door to her was Lois. Sweetheart. Sweet, sweet, sweetheart. Her and Susie, I believe, were the middle girls. And they had a brother. They also had another sister. And one thing about Sally that I didn't realize till I got older is that she never drove. I never saw Sally drive. And my mother eventually told me how Sally was in the car with her sister, one of them, and they had gotten into a car accident, and her sister died as a result of that car accident. And from that trauma, Sally decided not to drive. So this was my adopted family in Georgia. These strong women, their husbands. I remember Lois's husband, Jack, had a jerry curl, always wore sunglasses. Chestine's husband, dark skin. My Uncle Leon, and Grandpa Leon. He'd always say, "Hey, Eric." This huge smile. Whether I was 3-4 years old or I was 20, 19, something in college, coming back to visit. The sweetest, sweetest man. They never hurt me. They never abused me. I remember I got food poisoning, and so did Susie, and we were both throwing up at the same time in the toilet, and she actually threw up trying to stand over me on my head. Like, it was that's a memory that will live in infamy. Sundays, I didn't mind church. Sometimes the young kids there, the teenagers, they'd take me from my mom and play with me, watch me during the church service, maybe to distract themselves, give her a break. And I loved it. But what I absolutely dreaded, was when they called all the kids up to sing at the front of the church. And you all know, I love singing now. But this is where it got started. And I had stage fright. And I still mustered to push it out. But I look back at how scared I was, how nervous. And it was usually one song. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel? No. I'm gonna let it shine. All through the night, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. It was instilled in me from a young age that there is a light inside of me. There are lights inside of us. And those lights unite. Maybe it's one light shared, divided into these bodies, maybe separate lights. On today's episode of The Rhetorical Sake, I am going to share with you all how I saw my light. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Rhetorical Sake podcast once again. This is the show for the faint of heart, for the brokenhearted, the weak and the lost. If you have it all together, then this might not be the podcast for you. But if you're like me and you struggle, and you want to listen to something real, well, you've come to the right place. If you're looking to find out more about me, E.R. Hunter, go ahead and check out my website, erhunter.live. That's erhunter.live. You can email me at ERTH, that is Earth without the A, ERTH, at erhunter.live. I am scouting for guests, scouting for sponsors, but most importantly, I'm scouting for impact. That's why we're here. This is not a business, and yes, this show is sponsored by what I started a few years ago now, Extra Resources That Help Earth. But this is art. This is my art, similar to my first book, Chasing God Alcoholically, a personal reflection on pursuing spirituality in early sobriety. And I have my other book, God Sent Dog, which is the story of how my dog led me, opened my eyes, helped me realize that I needed to clean up my act and maybe just try to live sober. It's the story of that journey. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. I'm so stoked to share this message. So let's jump right back into it.
There's a Bible verse, well, there's tons of Bible verses about light There's Matthew 5:14, after Jesus says the Beatitudes. Blessed are they, blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor, inherit the earth. They shall be, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be fed. And after that, verse 14 of chapter 5 in the book of Matthew says, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. I'm so reminded of my time in college at Pepperdine with that one, because it is a little city on a hill in Malibu. And it's pretty cool to look at night. 1 John 1:5. This is the one. This is the one. This is the message we have heard from him and proclaimed to you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. That God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. Ephesians 5:8. For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. There's something to this metaphor of brilliance in the midst of darkness. In growing up, that is what I had to be. There were people around me or someone around me that, I'd say people, they would remind me not to embarrass them. I'd feel ashamed, guilty, scared to go outside out of fear that I might embarrass someone who had authority or some type of leverage over me. And that is someone trying to kind of snuff out your light. And my mother being, single mother and, following that verse, train up a child in the way that he should go, so that when he is old, he shall not depart from it. She worked hard to get me into a Christian private school, high-scale school in Atlanta, Georgia, Buckhead, down the street from the governor's mansion. And high-scale school isn't there anymore, but it's where I attended. I was about 3 years old before kindergarten, all the way through 5th grade. And if you've grown up in the church or a religious setting, homosexuality, being gay is not, it's not usually applauded. It's actually, to them, it's reprehensible. It's a sin. It's an abomination. Because that is in the Bible. Man should not lay with man how he lays with the woman. In Leviticus, the Old Testament. And, from what I gather, that book was written having to do with the Greeks. The Greeks would intermix, with the Hebrews. And the Hebrews got introduced to homosexuality and this culture that would also allow pedophilia. So there's always statutes surrounding these verses. And do I pick and choose what I want to read? Sure. Don't we all? Am I trying to make the best out of my life and make sense of this experience? Yeah. To me, from what I gather, and having grown up in Christian school and gone to Christian college and come of age and realized my sexuality and who I am, my God is love. That's all. It says it. It's evident. God is love. This little book, this Bible, is a reference point. It's a history book. And we all know change is inevitable. So why wouldn't our perspectives shift? What I know is that I am meant to love and that I am loved. And whether my attraction lies with a man or a woman or a transsexual, transgender person, I don't see that as a sin. I don't feel it as a sin. I don't feel it as some type of damage to my soul. I feel love. And it's not like I just feel it, through my penis. I feel it through my heart. So when I started going through puberty, 2001, after September 11th, Halloween that morning, I lived right around the corner from this Catholic school I went to in Virginia. And I remember I woke up before I had to really get up. And so I was snoozing. And I fell into these dreams. And I've probably discussed this on the show before. But the second dream I fell into, I'm riding in the back of a car. And my godbrothers, my mom's best friend, her son and her stepson, are sitting next to me. And we're all wearing white T-shirts. My mom's in the passenger seat. And at that point, I had a stepfather, and he was driving the car, per usual. And we're all wearing white. And he looks out his window, and he says, "Wow, that's really nice someone did that." And I was curious as to what it was, so I lean over, and I look out the driver's side rear window, and I see 3 crosses floating in the sky. They look like they were like cut out of mattresses. And that Halloween, I had got a costume like Roman. It was like a white tunic with a red sash, like Caesar or something. Well, the middle cross, which was floating in the sky, had a red sash across it, like my costume. And sure, yeah, just a dream. Well, in that dream, I blink, and I start to get blasted upwards. I'm accelerating through the clouds, and my eyes aren't open, but the light is getting brighter and brighter. I feel myself ascending, and I hear chains rattling as they fall off of me. Like it was like these puzzle pieces of me, this clay shell of me was breaking off the more I ascended. And I eventually, all that exterior was gone, and I arrived in this place when I came to a stop, and it was so bright that it was like being in a tanning booth or red light therapy where your eyes are closed, but the light is still coming through your eyelids. So I wasn't keen on opening my eyes too quick because it was so bright, but I felt no fear. I felt no pain. I felt no worry. I felt awesome. It is indescribable how I was, like thinking mentally, spiritually, physically. I was my essence. And I see a silhouette of someone, seems like they have shoulder length hair, about my height, maybe shorter. They just come up to me and they shake their head. And it seems like, from what I recall, they kind of push me on my right shoulder. And when I do open my eyes, I'm looking up at the roof, the ceiling in my room, but I fall. It felt like I was like levitating or something, floating 2 inches above my mattress. Like I fell back onto my mattress. And I look at the clock, and it's the same time it was when I had previously woken up to check the time for that morning, like 7:01, 7:02 a.m. And all the same noises were going on outside that had already happened before. So there was this time lapse. It was almost like I'd gone back in time. And I was in shock because now I'm back in my body. I'm back to normal, what seemed like normalcy. And I did not like that. It scared me. It scared me to go from feeling complete ecstasy, no worry, no fear, to being back to reality, humanity. And I asked God never to do that to me again. I mean, I went through that Halloween like stone cold shook. And I talked to my grandmother about it after school that day and described it, and she said, well, the 3 crosses in the sky, that's the body of Christ. So, you go to Christian school growing up, and especially as a teenager, the book of Revelation, it starts to get real interesting and appealing. It definitely gives a new spin and tone to the Bible because of the monsters and the end of the world and the apocalypse, and it's pretty cool. But it wasn't anything I was too obsessed with then. But I think some of that teenage interest played into the dream or the vision, or I don't know if I died and got sent back. I don't know if my brain, because of puberty, just pumped out some DMT, but I was definitely in another world. I was in another dimension, and the only way I could describe it is heaven. And so I'm not scared of dying. I know heaven is real. I also know that I have been shown something and given an experience that few and far between have had. Most of the time when I hear people relating to this, for one, they open their eyes. Two, they usually suffer some type of trauma where they're about to die, or technically they did die and that somehow miraculously they came back, and they describe something like this. If you check out my episode with Joy Fratzis, he also mentions, with his battle with cancer, and clearly showed some interest in finding out what's on the other side. So listening to interviews and things like that of people's experiences. There's a lot of commonality with what I experienced. And so that changed me. And I'm grateful for it, because if I did not have that experience, I don't know if I would have ever made it back to see my light. I remember making conscious decisions to turn my back on my higher power, on God, on the author of the universe, because life wasn't going how I wanted it to go, or I want it to be bad. So for instance, when in high school, my family went through a lot, and we were pretty involved in a church, and it seemed like there was this scandal after scandal, and we were being talked about, and there's hierarchies in the church, especially Pentecostal, the black church, deacons, deaconesses, evangelists, youth ministry, and all this. And so to see my family members get demoted, and to see people experience them treat me differently, and just cast that judgment. I remember telling a girl I was like semi-dating at the time, I was like, I'm done. Like, we were the good family. Like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, and she was like, don't say that, don't say that. So that was like the first time. When I got to Pepperdine College, these seniors, juniors, older kids, they were having a prayer in the amphitheater, and I remember I thought this one guy was pretty cute. He played lacrosse, and I joined the lacrosse team there, intramural, and these kids are like putting hands on me and praying, and I open up my eyes during the prayer, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, I don't think this is who I want to be. Like, I've been this guy throughout high school. Like, now I want college. I want to party. I want to experience, LA and all this stuff. And I knew I made a decision in my heart to let go of God, the calling, the discipline that was required of me. And that set me back. I mean, I'm grateful for the experiences, but I also have to be grateful for the mercy and the grace, because I really, sometimes I'm looking back and I'm like, technically, if you really did the math, I don't know if I should be here right now. And then going, after I graduated, I transitioned to New York City, got invited out there by a friend to make music. And he let me know, he's like, all that religious stuff, you're going to have to leave that at the door. He's like, if we're going to write songs, here in New York City, people don't want to hear that. And so I believed him, and I remember going to a library in Manhattan and getting a book, I want to say Dawkins or somebody, atheist, and trying to be an agnostic and an atheist or atheist, and just live life without God in New York City. but live life, with the tall boy every day. Like I was a bike messenger, caterer, and at the end of the day, going to the music studio, I felt like I deserved a drink, and that's what I knew in college. And that got in the way, and eventually, in a homeless shelter in New York City. So hit a bottom after that, after I transitioned to Florida, and I fell head over heels for someone I loved and I knew for like 11 years at that point. And we got in this huge argument, and the last thing he said to me, he's like waving his hand, brushing me off. He's like, go to LA, do what you got to do. And I took that and I ran with it, and just a stupendous depression ensued after that. But there was a fire in me to prove him wrong, to prove to all these people that I had risked coming out the closet for to make it. And so I'm grateful for that too, because I needed that heartbreak. I needed that pain to appreciate and push for the gold. And I was living on a boat in Marina del Rey when I made it back to California, and I was working at, a fish shack, Malibu Seafood, where I had worked throughout college since my freshman year. And, a professor came in, she's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, just living the simple life. And she's like, get out of here. Like, go apply yourself, And so I was running this dog. This guy lived right on the boardwalk in Venice Beach. He had a puppy, Tamaskin. Was running that dog 7 a.m. in the morning and 7 p.m. at night. Was also working for this Hollywood mogul, kind of behind the scenes guy, and we would get these camera deals like Superman, Man of Steel, like everyone's watching Justice League right now, and I am the little guy that kept calling a production office in Montana. I saw the light in that production office. I saw the potential, and I made that connection, and ended up handing him over a camera list from that director of photography, and lo and behold, we scored that deal. So living on this boat, this little sailboat in Marina del Rey, running like 7-8 miles a day, I just reached out to someone I had interned with and ended up getting hired at NBC, and went to NBC. And I remember telling my grandmother before I started that job, well, when I got it, I was like, well, looks like I just sold my soul to the devil. And it was like, it made her ears burn. Her heart just melted. And I was like, I'm just, saying like, I'm going to have to, really, it's just a figure of speech, like give up everything, play by the rules. And that didn't work out because once again, something from my childhood, people trying to snuff out my light, came up, and I stood up for myself, and I butted heads with superiors, producers, executive producers. That led me to another heartbreak, another pain. What I thought was my dream job ended up becoming a nightmare. So it forced me to find my light again. To rekindle that original fire that was in that little boy singing in St. James Methodist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. And so I'll say this: sobriety, that clarity, anonymous programs have illuminated the path to my light. The clarity, the openness, the vulnerability, and ultimately the connections of being sober and working a program and AA, NA, CA, whatever. Those connections not only filled a void that I felt all my life, but they also opened my eyes. And so experiencing what I experienced in that dream here on earth, surrounded by all this bright light. But now here I can open my eyes and I see these people and I hear from them and we talk and we get to know each other and we share our pain. We bleed out our hearts. And the more we do that, the more it stokes our inner light, our inner flame, that fire. And a big part of it is doing the work. I mean, who wants to work more than they have to? But if my life has shown me anything, is that I have to do the work if I'm going to survive. It's, if I'm stoking the flame, if I'm building a fire, if I want to keep it going, then I got to chop the wood. And that's going to cause some splinters. That's going to toughen up my hands. It might give me a little back pain. I got to grab an axe. I got to, position the wood. And I got to chop and I got to store up. Because it's going to rain. It's going to snow. It will get cold. And what I want to do is hope for the best, but plan for the worst. It's taken 31 years. Yeah, I heard that, maybe a decade ago, but to apply it, 31 years now. And so enduring the pain of doing the work, my light is worth it. Recently, I had another episode with my heart. And some could say it's my fault. It's my own doing. Could be the luck of the draw. Did alcohol help? No. Did my coping mechanisms help? No. Was I doing the work? No. And it almost cost me my life. 2 weeks ago, I went to the ER because I knew what was happening. I knew I was having a heart attack. And they admitted me. And 2 days, that Monday, I had a coronary angiogram performed on me. They thought that my heart was damaged. My arteries might have been clogged. Could have been some clot, some blockage. And so after the procedure, they went through my right wrist, through my main artery. They told me that I looked better than they thought. Even though the stress tests, the ultrasound, the imaging came back really rough, which is why they did the procedure, they were surprised to see that, I'm more than okay. I don't know if anything changed between the stress tests and that procedure, catheterization to my heart. But afterwards, I said, how did everything go? And, the physician's assistant, she directed me to look at a screen and she said, that's your heart. And she did like a time lapse of what they had experienced. And what I saw were these flickers, different colors of light all around my heart. And I was so humbled because I realized that's me. I still have that light in my heart. I'm still going. And yeah, I feel undeserving, but that was me. All these different colors, all illuminating these different signatures, and that charge is there. It's here. Those of us that are living, we have that. And I think those combinations, those flickers of light are unique for each and every one of us, but light nonetheless. And I saw my light. I saw my light. And now, even though I don't always feel it, but it's just like doing this podcast, I want to protect my light. I want to strengthen my light. I want my light to be immutable so that others can gain from it and it won't diminish. That it would build and yet still humble me. We are so unique in that we have our consciousness. We have this charge, electric light flashing in each and every one of us now. And so I'm humbled and I'm grateful because I want to continue on. I want to go on and live because I've seen my light. For my God, yes, but for the ones whose light has gone out. And when I say gone out, I mean gone out of their body. You all know we lost Alexander Miotti last year. I just lost my great-grandfather. It's like day after day on the news, another great, another titan has fallen and their light has gone out, but it's just gone out of their body. I heard T.D. Jakes say that just because something's lost, like you lose your keys, you just don't know where they're at. You don't see them, but they're still there. They're still there. So just because we lose somebody doesn't mean they're gone. I don't think of death as an expiration anymore. I think of it more of a transition. And yes, I got that from New Amsterdam, the television show, but epic line. So with that, I hope who's ever listening that you too get to see your light. And hopefully not through an angiogram, but through experience and through others and through love and through serenity. Just those moments of peace where you lay down to go to sleep unafraid and you wake up grateful. This podcast is me sharing my light because I saw my light, and I hope you get to see yours too, because you are absolutely worth every moment on this planet. I'm going to get out of here. I got to make a meeting, and I hope that you do what you got to do to protect your light, your energy. And if you're like me, I want to give it back to God, so that when this is all said and done, and I arrive at that bright, bright place in the sky, for one, He'll know I tried to fight the good fight of faith, but that I shared my light, and that the Creator of the universe would share theirs with me. Thank you all so much.